Neko, you'll be performing in Central Indiana on January 22nd at the Palladium. Thank you for taking time to speak to our audience here in Indiana.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, I know you've played here a ton of times through the years. Does coming to Indiana mean anything? Does it stir any memories?
Well, I have a lot of Hoosiers in my life, so I'm always excited to be back in Indiana, and it's also the site of the greatest show of fireflies I've ever seen. I think you guys have the best firefly viewing of any place in the country. I'm always completely amazed when I'm there and I see the fireflies. It always makes me so excited.
Yeah, I think that might be our official state insect, if there's such a thing. I know there's a lot of pride around the presence of the fireflies here.
There should be, because, man, you guys, like, we have really good fireflies in Vermont, but you guys have, like, a crazy laser light show of fireflies, which is really impressive.
Well, you probably won't see any this time around, but maybe next time.
No, I expect that they're sleeping peacefully, feet below the ground now.
Yeah. You're touring in support of your latest album, Neon Gray, Midnight Green. This is your first album in 7 years, and I believe your first entirely self-produced album. The record has a huge and at times majestic sound with strings and woodwinds and harps. Can you talk a little bit about the sound of this record and kind of what inspired you to add those elements to the music?
Well, it's the first time I ever credited myself as self-producing, but it's always kind of been that way. It's just that unless you make a record yourself from start to finish, you write all the songs, you do all the engineering, you do the mastering, like, all production is collaborative. But I make all of the decisions, and, I write the songs, etc. And, it was in my own studio this time as well, for the most part. So I thought it was time to just credit myself that way. Not just because, it's true, but also because when I'm thinking about the world of production, like, the first thing I see in my mind is a man. Like, I forget, that there are women and non-binary people who also do this job. And I need to remind myself as well. As far as the sound goes, I had always wanted to have an orchestra on the record. And in the climate now where we're so involved in, streaming and AI and all those things, I thought it was important to make a record with all human hands and shuffling and breathing. And not that I think there's anything wrong with, say, doing strings on a keyboard. That sounds really cool sometimes too, but I wanted there to be real people. I got maybe what might be the last advance ever to be given to anyone to make a record too, so I really wanted to hire real musicians for the whole thing. And not that musicians playing strings on a keyboard aren't real musicians, because they are, but just I wanted there to be a real presence, because people kind of take us for granted and they forget about us. And I was really moved, as I knew I would be, by the majesty of 30 people playing at once. And as a songwriter and a person who performs, there's no way to really hear what you sound like because you're too close to yourself. It's kind of a catch-22. But when an orchestra of people start playing your song, that's as close as you can ever get to hearing your own music as an outsider. And it's really, really heavy. It's very moving. And, just all of that human effort together, synchronized, is really, I cried a lot in the studio, which did not surprise me. I knew I would, but I hope it wasn't super embarrassing for all of them. Just like, the crying lady behind the glass, looking at them, crying openly.
Yeah, I love the sound of the record. I grew up listening to the Oldie Station and all those Baroque pop records like The Zombies and Left Bank. I don't know if that was at all circulating in your head, but it definitely had that kind of big sound that I grew up loving. Yeah,
absolutely. Like, the studio where Frank Sinatra recorded, and like I was really, I still am really heavily into the sound of the production on Platter's records. There's a guy named Buck Ram who produced those records, and the orchestra in them is so magical and somehow diabolical at the same time. It's a force of nature. It's like all things at once. It's so beautiful, but I also hear there's just so many layers in there. There's so much meat in it, and you can spend your lifetime just finding new things.
Yeah, I love the platters as a reference point, and I can hear that now that you mentioned it. That's very cool.
Twilight time, ooh,
Yeah.
it's spooky and also beautiful and romantic, and the top of its craft. It's really truly phenomenal. And then also all these other flavors.
Neko, you mentioned the album being in some ways, the orchestration on the album being in some ways a reaction to things that are currently happening in the music industry, the use of AI, replacing live musicians with, synthetic sources of sound. The way people listen to music and make music has changed a lot since you started issuing albums in the 1990s. One of the ways that has changed is through the rise of streaming platforms like Spotify. I know you've been very critical of Spotify in particular.
I hate Spotify. Straight up hate
it. Well, I share your feelings on that subject. Anything you want to share with our listeners about it? I mean, I think a lot of people, this is something they use casually and don't really think about the politics of it or how this is hurting musicians in the bigger picture. Anything you would say to our listeners about using the platform Spotify or similar streaming sites?
Well, I mean, the orchestra and hiring all the musicians was more a reaction to the way people have forgotten that musicians are people and that we need to eat and we need to raise our families. Like we're regular people, and the industry of music has very, very long fingers. And, there are a lot of people in everybody's town on local levels that, work in music clubs or, selling music or whatever. And there's so many people affected whose jobs are affected by AI, or not AI, but, streaming. And nobody ever asked musicians what they wanted. So in a way, it's kind of illegal, other than the fact that, you take your music off it if you don't want to be there. I don't want to be there, but I have a 50-50 deal with my record company. And the reason that I am not gone yet, and this could be any second now anyway, is because I'm promoting a record and they asked kindly that I not remove it yet. And they have done everything I have ever asked them to do and more. And we have a very good relationship. And so I said, I will halt my leaving for you for now, because we do have an excellent relationship, which kind of goes against the stereotype of musicians and their record companies. I love them dearly. So, it's good to think about things and just remember that we didn't agree to any of this, and we didn't have any part in saying how much money we were supposed to be paid for this, but it's not a living wage. It's a exploitive, very exploitive system.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was saying even if you have the paid version of it, it's still exploitive because we don't make more money from that. So just if everybody could think about where they get their music and kind of reevaluate that and change to a different platform, or just make sure you support musicians by buying things too. That's really helpful. And I think that streaming is a magnificent technology. Like, what a great way for everyone to get music. But these people, Daniel Ek and these people, they don't care about music. They don't care about musicians. They run ads for ICE on their site, and they're, making AI war machines. It does not jive with any musicians. There might be 2 or 3 out there, but for the most part, it does not go along with the making of art and music in any way. It is absolutely opposite and anti what we do. And so music is supposed to be an art for our general well-being and our souls, and it's kind of like eating arsenic. in a way. It's not good for you.
You know, various musicians have independently over the years decided to pull their music from Spotify. Do you think we'll reach a point of critical mass anytime soon where musicians collectively just decide enough is enough? We don't like their politics. We don't like being ripped off by the mechanics of how they're distributing payment to artists. Do you think we're anywhere near a point where that could happen?
I would like to think so, but I've always been really terrible at predicting trends, so I'm not the person to ask about that.
Fair enough.
I may think I know what's happening, but I generally, as far as things like that go, I've never really been right. Like, I never expected vinyl to come back, but that's been pretty exciting.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. And Neko, we talked about the orchestration on the album. I want to ask a question, kind of an off-the-wall question about your voice. You have a very rich voice that encompasses, I think, a lot of different influences. I want to ask you about one particular set of influences that you've spoken about. You have a deep interest in vocalists from the golden era of Arabic pop music. People like Warda, Kulthum,
Yes.
Ferouz.
Yes.
I'm fascinated by these singers as well, and it really interests me that this is something that has influenced your work because it's not immediately obvious when you're listening. Tell me about your interest in these singers and how that has maybe in some way influenced your vocals.
Well, I happened upon music like this in my late teens. There used to be a dance station in Seattle called C89 FM. And on midnights, I think it was like on Tuesday, it would change over and it would become this beautiful, Middle Eastern Arabic station, and Kulthum, Ferouz, and all these different singers would be played. And I was just fascinated because these women had these incredible voices, but they would do all these crazy things with their voices, and they would be all these different characters. Like, I could not speak Arabic, yet I knew that these women were all different people, and they were making these incredible dramatic scenes with their voices. They were telling these very deep stories, and I was so impressed. And I didn't really register at the time, but one of the things I was responding to is they were using their voices very forcefully, and they weren't worried about being pretty. They were telling a story, and they were using their voices as every character, every tool, every language that there was. Their toolbox was deep, and they weren't worried about femininity or seeming beautiful. And that was something that was very different, because even now, a lot of women tend to navigate toward a quote unquote pretty way of singing or beautiful. People are a little hesitant to try out the guttural tones or the ugly tones. And, that's not to say everyone's like that, of course, but I was always really drawn to women who did that. And there was so much of it in that gorgeous, gorgeous genre of singing that I just couldn't stay away. I would tape it off the radio. I still have a tape I made from C89 FM, and, Kulthum is on it, and I still listen to it. And it's really funny because the way audio tape worked then, you could hear print through from the other side. So underneath the Kulthum, you can hear some of London Calling by the Clash. So it's its own Frankenstein kind of thing.
That's amazing. I love that you still have the tape.
I do.
Yeah, that's so cool. Neko, last year you were very busy, at least it looks like you were very busy. In addition to releasing this incredible album, you also published a best-selling memoir. And from what I've understand, you've also been writing songs for a musical based on the film Thelma and Louise.
Yes.
Anything you can tell us about that? Is it coming out anytime soon? And kind of what prompted you to get involved with that project?
Well, I've known Callie Khouri, who wrote Thelma and Louise, and won the Oscar for the screenplay for a long time. And one day I got a call in like 2016, and she said, would you be interested in doing this? And I would not have, I don't think, if it was any other project, but I was kind of the target audience for Thelma and Louise when it came out, and it meant so much to me, and Callie means a lot to me. So I said yes, even though it is something that, and I made sure that I said, that I don't know anything about musicals. And she's like, that's fine. Don't worry about that, and so I was like, okay, I hope I do a good job. I don't know. But it's been it has been 10 years now. And we're doing our final push workshop this summer, and then it comes out to, limited, I think, showings in September in London at the Young Vic Theatre. So from there, I think we decide if it stays in London or if it goes to Broadway or what happens to it. I couldn't tell you.
Did you adapt or change your songwriting at all to fit into this format, or was it a more authentic process of just responding to the material in the way that you would when writing your own music?
Well, I think I already write stories in kind of a linear fashion, so that wasn't a hard thing to do. That felt normal. It felt natural. In a way, it's kind of freeing because I'm not writing for myself. I'm writing for the story and to serve the song. And there's, 4 or 5 people on the creative team who we all, what's the word? I can't think of the word, but we all kind of are there to judge each other, not judge, but like to
critique,
jury each other on, critique each other. And so we're all deciding what's going to happen at all times. And so in a lot of ways, that takes a lot of the pressure off of, having to please myself, because it's so easy to go down like all the rabbit holes that exist if you're trying to please yourself. Whereas this story is already a story, and I'm not writing a new story. I'm adding details to a story, and that is something I really enjoy. And what they'll hand me is like, okay, we need a song for this that needs to say this, this, and this. So it's kind of like getting the instructions and a few details on how to write a really difficult crossword puzzle. And that I find really challenging and really fun. And so I really like it. I really enjoy it.
That's super interesting. Excited to hear what this sounds like when it does make its way to the U.S. Neko, as I mentioned, you'll be performing in Indiana, Central Indiana, on January 22nd. You're currently on tour right now. Before we go, I just wondered how you're feeling about touring the country right now. It's a very tense time. There's a lot of division in the country. Is that palpable as you're out traveling around? Is it something you think about or worry about as you tour the United States right now?
Yeah, and it's not that I worry about people at our shows not being into what we're doing. It's more the women in my life and in everybody's life right now are pretty upset. And it's a really good time to check in with the women in your life, and the non-binary people in your life. Like, we're messed up for the most part. Like, it's a big deal. Like, it's always been legal to hurt us, to kill us, to rape us, but now it's just out in the open, and a lot of us are really traumatized and really scared and really angry. And that, like, for example, I know logically that I am safe right now, but my body doesn't know it. My body is on alert, high alert. I'm a person who's lived through a lot of trauma, and so my body is fight or flight. And so I have a lot of anxiety. And so I check in a lot with other people on this trip, and it helps a lot. And, I also feel that it's a good idea to take something joyful to people right now and to remind them that they're powerful and that they are the answer to all this horror. And they are capable and smart and not alone. And it's just it's the time for that. And so I take it very seriously. But I also want to make sure that we are reminding each other of the joys and the love too, because your body can't live like that. Your body can't live in a constant state of high alert. It's really unhealthy and unbelievably uncomfortable and concerning. So check in with the women in your life, and non-binary folks and queer folks. We're all really, really upset and really traumatized and horrified, and just like people of color who are being victimized by this at 5 and 6 times the level. And it's all a horror show and made to make us afraid. And it's cheap and it works. It's cheap for them, expensive for us. And it's we have to resist it.
Appreciate you. Yeah. Appreciate you for sharing that.
Thank you.
As you mentioned, it's important that we continue creating and spreading positivity and joy and inspiration to people. And you'll be doing that here in Central Indiana on January 22nd at the Palladium. Any final thoughts you want to leave our audience with, or anything you want to say about the show?
Well, come early, because we're playing with the magnificent, magnificent Desdemonas from DC, who are incredible and are so joyful and have so many great things to say. And hearing them is very bolstering and makes you feel good. And, that joy is part of our human magnificence and reminds us that we are powerful and capable. And so, I look forward to sharing them with you and sharing my own music with you, and just come on over, and we're there to feel good and to be there with each other.
Neko, I know you've got a show tonight. You've got a busy schedule, so I really appreciate you taking time to speak to our audience in Indiana. It's been a pleasure to connect with you. I appreciate it.
It's a pleasure to talk to you, too. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. See you in Indiana.
Indeed. Thank you, Kyle.